This is a Socialist News and Views special interview.
I'm Nick Schillingford, coming to you from the Urban Cabin Studios in South Minneapolis with this special interview. On Socialist News and Views, we let folks introduce themselves. Do you want to just tell our audience who you are?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Meant. I share pronouns. I am an associate professor of statistics and data science at Macalester College. I've been there 7 years, and I'm also a member of the Zero Burn Coalition.
Yeah, now on Tuesday, July 22nd, I came out to an action with y'all at the Hennepin County Government Center, and I gave testimony at the Hennepin County Government Center to the commissioners meeting as a certified public health nurse, registered nurse, about excess deaths caused by pollution in our world today. And that was a really great opportunity, something I just kind of like found out about at the last minute. Although I've supported this campaign a little bit before. Can you talk about what brought you out to that space and, where folks are at with this campaign to close down the Hennepin Energy Recovery Center, what they usually call the HERC?
Yeah. So I just started working with the campaign in February. So I've been with the
Nice.
campaign for about 6 months. Um, and I joined because I'm on sabbatical from Macalester for the year, and I've just been increasingly worried about climate change and wanting to do something, especially in my own community.
Mm,
Um, and through various channels like the Sierra Club Zero Waste team, I learned about the campaign, and I'd heard about HARC before, but it just didn't really connect until I connected with one of the campaign organizers in February. Um, and he brought me on in a way that I felt like I was able to contribute. And it was just shocking to learn about the politics of the situation. It has been such a back and forth between, well, I mean, it's been a lot of passing the puck, honestly. Um, the struggle has been going on, I mean, for over 3 decades, honestly.
a long time, yeah.
Um, Activists were protesting HERC being built in the 1980s. Um, but in recent years, um, Hennepin County, although they stated their backing of the closure, has just seemed to kind of deflect. And the chair of the Board of Commissioners, Irene Fernando, ran for her position on closing the HERC. That was one of her stated goals, but she's since like really backtracked and like not engaged with her constituents who want to have conversations about closing this facility. They keep citing other things, like they keep citing reasons why not. And so, like, one of the why nots is like, oh, Minneapolis contributes 75% of the trash. They need to get to some really high level of like recycling and organics,
Right.
um, recycling or like recycling and organic slash composting rates, which is just far above what it is right now. And I mean, I kind of see where they would get that mentality, but like the reality is that HERC is hurting people right now.
Right.
Um, and kind of the straw man that the county is putting up, like they keep claiming that landfills are the devil. Landfills are bad, don't get me wrong. And that like we'll run out of space in landfills, but neither of these things are fully true.
Well, that actually kind of gets me to my next point. So it sounds like the county commissioners and even the what was that, the chair,
Yeah,
the
the chair, Irene.
chair you
So,
ran on that. So they've paid some lip service to this at one point, but now it sounds like basically they're using every tactic to drag their feet, like you said, deflect, ignore all the tactics they can use to just avoid having to actually do anything about that. You mentioned what they say versus what the actual truth is, and I wanted to kind of reference that. In reference to a figure on a staff report that I saw for the Hennepin County Board of
mhm.
Commissioners, September 2023, it says, quote, HERC's pollution control equipment and operators control air emissions to be consistently below the MPCA, that's the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's permitted levels. And then they also go on to say, quote, the combustion process reduces the volume of trash by 90%. The material remaining after combustion is non-hazardous ash that is disposed of at the SKB landfill in Rosemount, end quote. Are those 100% accurate statements from the Hennepin County report there, Leslie, as far as you are concerned?
So like this is the thing about facts. Facts always need context. And so those
Yep.
are literally true facts.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But
but
they're missing
they're,
a
but
lot.
they're misleading. There's a lot of context that needs to be clarified. So I can start with the first one. Like I think that's the one that the county says a lot first to reassure people that like HERC is safe. Like, you
Right.
know, when people hear trash incinerator, they're like, oh my gosh, fumes. And like the reality is there is harmful pollution. And it is true that HERC's emissions are below their MPCA permit limits. But that permit was from 1998 and and based on EPA standards from 1995 with a few small updates in 2006.
Right.
Um, and there are a couple of reasons why this is an issue. So the EPA has come out with revised emission standards. They've proposed new emission standards um, that are now actually guided by some public health reasoning. The 1995 levels were not guided at all by
Right.
public health research. They were purely based on what is air pollution control technology able to do at this moment, regardless of whether it's safe for human health or not. Um, so like those those insufficient standards are what HERC's permit is based on. So in 2023, the EPA proposed new limits that are way lower than what they are now, way lower than what's in place for HERC.
Right.
And under those limits, there are some pollutants that would be way above acceptable levels, and all of the pollutants that HERC emits would be so much closer to proposed limits.
Mm-hmm.
Such that, like, basically, if a facility like HERC were trying to be built today, it wouldn't be allowed to be built.
Right. And there's another piece, and I think you kind of that's part of that too, which is that and I know that some of the organizations have mentioned this at different times, that all the different um, you know, waivers or whatever, or clearance or acceptance for these facilities are all granted separately, right? That they look at the HERC and they say, oh, it's only emitting this much, and oh, they look at this and it's only emitting this much. But if you look at all those areas together and you have a lot of highly polluting things in the same area, then you realize that okay, well, technically this one's below the level, but then when you look at all these different polluting entities here with all of their levels that are approaching a number that, again, like you said, has really no meaning, essentially. I mean, it was made up. It has no meaning. So it's below a number that doesn't mean anything. And it's only a little bit below that. And then you have all these other polluting entities there too.
No, it's so true. And like I that's a really great point because like in presentations that the county has given to other organizations, I have access to one that was given to the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. They literally show this problem that you're describing. Like it's not just ARC, it's a bunch of
Mm,
other things that actually altogether put health risks above currently acceptable levels as deemed by the Minnesota Department of Health. Um, and what really irks me about those presentations is that like by they, I mean HERC staff,
right.
um, use this to kind of frame how safe HERC is, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
um, relative to all of the sources of pollution. There is a lot of pollution in our world. There are a lot of facilities, not just stationary facilities, but like vehicle emissions. There's a lot of stuff. And like all of that together is a lot more than what HERC emits.
Right.
But that's not a reason to say that HERC is not dangerous. I I was so irked by this that I had to find a parallel example. And like a very potent parallel example is gun violence.
Mm.
Gun deaths made up 1.5% of all deaths. Um, I think I looked at the data in 2023,
Okay.
but it wouldn't shift that much in year to year.
Right.
1.5%.
Right.
That percent is lower than some of HERC's percentages in terms.
Right. Right. No, it's
No
true.
one is going to say that like gun violence doesn't matter.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and then getting to the piece about the ash, they say they burn 90% of that ash, or not, they claim that 90% of the trash is reduced by a volume of 90%. But then supposing there's still 10% left, they're still putting that 10% in a landfill, and they're
Hmm.
claiming that that material that they dispose of is non-hazardous. What's the that seems kind of unlikely on the surface. Like, what's the what's the process there? Is that just like a straight up lie, or is that are they doing some what's the word careful wording to get to that point?
It's finicky because all of the vast amount of literature that is out there on ash testing, other reports that I've seen, so in Europe apparently, um, ash has just routinely tested positive for being hazardous so
Mm,
often that it's just flat out classified as a hazardous material, no questions asked. So like how can it be so different here? Like there's no
right.
way that what we're incinerating here makes it so that our waste and ash composition is so different than what's in Europe. Um, but other than that, there's laboratory evidence to back up the fact that like the way that you test for toxicity of ash really matters.
Mm.
Like the solution that you use to, I'm not a chemist.
No, no, that's very fair. No, but that's
Um,
correct. You're accurate, I believe.
Yeah, basically the solution in which the ash is submerged in order to conduct the testing really matters. Like just the acidity of it, the chemical makeup of the solution used
Right.
to test the ash, the measurement technology used to test the ash. Um, all of this has a huge impact on how much, like in particular, heavy metals are able to be leached out and
Right.
detected. And this is particularly concerning because people who are very pro incinerators like to say that ash is a great building material. So there have been advocates for using ash to like build roads. Um, but the problem is that like even in very slightly acidic conditions, which by the way is the composition of rain, rain is slightly acidic, heavy metals can leach out.
Yep.
Um, and what's even scarier is that I think one of the local, I I think it may have been Pope Douglas, but I would need to double check to make sure. One of the smaller incinerators in Minnesota actually used their incinerator ash for
Mm.
building a road project. Um, and so that alarms me because like that road is in use right now. It rains
Right.
and
What happens
like
there? Yeah.
it's just road and ground and like those toxins would be just leaching into the groundwater. And we have groundwater issues up the wazoo as it is. So,
Well, no, yeah, I was just gonna say. So there's kind of a few. I'm trying to do a better job of kind of like encapsulating stuff when I'm doing these interviews and stuff, just to make sure that we're getting the points out there. So I mean, I would imagine you're burning trash. There's a significant amount of variability in the ash that's produced, right? So you could have an impact on like how toxic the ash is by even like choosing a particular time of year to like test the ash, for example. There's things you could do. I'm sure there's what you're actually testing for, the method by which you're testing. And then, like you said, if you think to Europe and that they just consider the burnt, the ash from trash to be a toxic, a toxic element to start with, then it's highly likely that that in the United States they're doing a poor job of assessing that. And so yeah, and then you mentioned there's other things that can be applied to that once it's in a landfill, or maybe like you said, even used to build a road, or they start doing other things. With it. So, so there's a lot of room to fudge those numbers, and just, common sense might kind of indicate that doesn't seem quite right. That's my immediate response to that idea that the ash is non-hazardous. Something I'm gonna dig into a little bit more. I'm interested to find out a little bit more about that. So even the Minneapolis City Council, they've tried to like play a role in this. Minneapolis Council member Robin Walmsley said, quote, today is a big step towards protecting the health of our communities and addressing longstanding environmental injustices that disproportionately impact communities of color, end quote. That was on the day the Minneapolis City Council unanimously approved a plan to shut down the Hennepin Energy Recovery Center, HERC, in October 2024. Is that what this fight's about ultimately? Is it about environmental justice? What is environmental justice? What does that mean?
It's the idea that time and time again, people in power choose to act in ways that keep themselves safe at the expense of people who've been historically burdened. And so HERC is just one example of a terrible polluting facility being built in a marginalized community. In the 80s, it was much more so, but the North Loop area that the HERC is located in is a primarily Black and brown community.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much more so in the 1980s. Over time, that downtown area has shifted in demographics, but still overwhelmingly, the areas like 1 to 2 miles away from the HERC are low-income communities and communities of color. Much more so than the areas farther away from the cities. Those areas are generally whiter and more affluent.
Yeah, that whole environmental justice thing goes all the way from, obviously the environmental destruction, indigenous communities, Black and brown communities, but that goes all the way down to like the ecosystems, right? That that all these, a lot of times they like to claim like certain land like is empty or there's like nothing there or whatever, but we know that if you have like untouched forests and untouched land and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And so anytime you have something that you're doing without a significant assessment of the environment and the people and the community and everything that's going on there, you're going to end up with something that doesn't serve the people that aren't included in that process, like you said. Like you said, this process has been going on for a long time. I just, we're going to get the HERC shut, right? I mean, we're going to do this, right? This is like, this is where people are motivated, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. I really appreciate you coming out. It was great to see everybody on last Tuesday, really just giving it to the Hennepin County commissioners about this and really like trying to put the truth out there. Is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to plug or mention before you go? Where can people find you guys?
So the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table is one of the main organizations backing the Zero Burn Coalition.
Sure.
So you can support the campaign by visiting mnejtable.org.
Okay.
But also HERC and the Zero Burn Coalition has its own dedicated informational website, and that's at hercshutdown.org. HERC.
Put that in now. I'll include links to that stuff too, so that yeah. Okay, there we go. Include links to that, to the mnejtable.org, and I'll include link to the hercshutdown.org. Any other places where people can get should go? I know there was just an article that came out on the Nokomis Longfellow Nokomis Messenger. That's my local paper about the Zero Burn coalition and the event last week. Any other places people can check stuff out?
Those are the big ones.
Looking
So
to
on
see if there's
Herc
anything.
Shutdown, on both hercshutdown.org and the mnebigtable.org sites, there's a place where people can join the campaign.
Awesome.
That is the best way to get involved.
Are there any specific events coming up at this moment, or are we just kind of
We're still planning.
still working on?
July 22nd was a big planning.
No, it was a huge thing. I mean, we're still, looking at stuff from that. I just want to make sure if there was anything specific coming up, I make sure to plug it. But well, I really appreciate your time, Leslie, and I really appreciate all the work that y'all are doing with the Zero Burn Coalition. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Nick. It was great to be here.
And that's our special interview. Thanks for listening. Solidarity.
This has been a Socialist News and Views special interview.